Hello there and welcome to another edition of the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I'm John Arnette. Good to have you with us on a Friday. If you're driving home from work or still sitting in the office about to get out of work, Friday is here, the weekend is here. If you're driving into work, I guess that's too bad, but either way, glad to have you with us here on a beautiful Friday in Northeast Florida. I am John Arnette. This is the Social Gambler Radio Hour. We are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com, your leader in free sports picks, news, and reviews. We'll be getting into some of today's content on the Social Gambler here in a little bit. First, we'd like to let you know that if you'd like to join the program today, we always welcome you to do that. 794-9001. That's how you get in touch with us here. You'll speak first to Mr. Pete Melfi. Young gentlemen out there who'd like to talk to Pete Melfi. When I say ladies, nobody calls, so I figure maybe we'll mix it up. Surest way to get a hold of Pete Melfi, bill collector, young lady, no matter who you are, Pete Melfi is right here, standing by to take your phone calls, and you are welcome to join the show at any time, 794-9001.
The lines are now swamped with bill collectors. We've got them on lines 1 through 17.
Exactly. Pete was giving me the, stop that. He was giving me the kill switch signal. Well, you know. Lots to talk about today. British Open. Have you been watching the British Open? Pete, seen any of the British Open? Be honest.
Not a second.
Not a second. And I've seen ours. Love the British Open because, you know, it's about the only sporting event of the year where, at least over here, you know, where we live, when you wake up in the morning, no matter how early you wake up, and, you know, for the last few months, you know, I have a young son, and he wakes up, you know, 5:45 or 6, whatever it may be, and our place is small enough, when he wakes up, we wake up. So it's nice to have at 6:30 in the morning some really interesting television on. British Open. Because of the time difference, you know, British Open's really the only sporting event of the year that's like that. I guess the Olympics is like that too, and I know a lot of people really enjoy the Olympics. I prefer the British Open to the Olympics. Brandt Snedeker leads. He has tied Nick Faldo's 36-hole record, Open Championship, and they've been playing the Open Championship for a long time. 10 under par, 130. Shot 64 today. That tied the course record, which Adam Scott also matched in round 1. So obviously, Royal Lytham St. Anne's a little tame these last couple days. If you've been watching it, it's unusual to see a British Open where, you know, balls land on the green and back up. Not only with wedges, but with middle irons. Players able to hold the green, really sort of control the golf ball. And I think that's why you see a lot of Americans doing well in this event. Traditionally, the Open Championship, you know, it's not like the U.S. Open. The first couple of pages of the leaderboard are not usually dominated by Americans. But in addition to Brandt Snedeker, who's leading, Tiger Woods lurking in third place, 6 under par, 4 back. And tied for 5th, in the group tied for 5th, Jason Dufner and Matt Kuchar, 2 PGA Tour regulars. Both guys have played great over the last couple of years, hanging in there at 4 under, along with major champions Graham McDowell and Paul Lawrie. Adam Scott 1 shot back. Scott followed his 64 with a 67 today. Of course, Steve Williams, Tiger's former caddy, and there was that famously bitter split. He's on Adam Scott's bag. And don't think there isn't a little rivalry there. And until 6 or 8 months ago, since Williams had taken over for Adam Scott had fared better than Tiger Woods. That's all changed since Tiger Woods has won 3 times on the PGA Tour this year. But if Scott were to win this British Open, then he would go back to being the guy, you know, he would go back to, you could say that he's outperformed Woods since the time that Steve Williams took his bag. In other words, you could say that Steve Williams made the right business decision in going with Adam Scott over Tiger Woods, if Scott were to win this weekend. And we'll see if he will. Certainly, you know, 8 or 10 years ago, Tiger Woods, 4 behind in 3rd place, with only 2 guys ahead of him, Brandt Snedeker and Adam Scott, you would say, oh, Tiger's perfectly positioned. He's, you know, if not a sure thing, it would at least be a sure thing that he'd be right there on Sunday. But for the last several years, that hasn't been the case in majors. So what will it be like this weekend? Believe me, NBC, the Royal and Ancient, everybody who cares about how many people actually watch the British Open are extremely pleased about this situation, this leaderboard. Will Tiger fold like he did in the U.S. Open? Sort of fade on the weekend, and like he has in majors for the last 4 years. I mean, we're not talking about a few months or year and a half. 4 years. And how long will it take for people? Because you heard, I heard the show coming on right before us. I always hear the last 10 or 15 minutes of the show that comes on right before us here on ESPN 1420 St. Augustine, and that is the Scott Van Pelt show. Now, Ryan Russillo was on with some other guy. They were talking British Open, and you could tell they didn't know very much about golf, and they admitted they didn't know very much about golf. The first thing they said was, ooh, Tiger in perfect position. Well, yeah, when you see Tiger Woods there on the first page, 4 back, everybody still says, oh, it's Tiger's tournament. Even though it's been 4 years since that kind of talk's been warranted. And people might talk that. Tiger has done so much throughout his career, throughout the early part of his career. Winning 14 majors by the time he was 32. He had accomplished so much that maybe that's going to last for years and years, even if he doesn't win another major for another 4 years. People still might be like, oh, Tiger's right there. But it will be interesting to see how this all plays out over the weekend. Don't rule out, there's a large group at 4 under. Like I said, that includes guys like Paul Lawrie, Graham McDowell, Jason Dufner, Matt Kuchar, Ernie Els at 3 under. Now, normally you'd say, well, those guys are 6 or 7 back. A lot of times you're 6 or 7 back through 36 holes in the golf tournament. There's 30 guys in front of you. But in this case, 4 under par is tied for 5th. There's only 4 guys ahead of those guys at 4 under. So the reason that's significant is because all it would take is something like Brandt Snedeker folding, which he has shown the propensity to do in majors. I mean, this guy is a guy who might not have the emotional stability and, mental capacity, or he might not have what it takes to win a major. Had an excellent opportunity in the 2008 Masters. Really led the tournament most of the way. Played in the final group with eventual champion Trevor Immelman. He shot a 77. He was clearly not the same guy that he was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And, in the press conference, to say broke down to tears would be an understatement. You can go ahead and YouTube Brandt Snedeker 08 Masters press conference. The guy was literally a babbling mess, could not get out a word. And to me, that shows me, it's not like, nothing to be ashamed of, I guess. And who knows how you or I would react in that situation. I understand what he had just missed out on. If he had won the Masters, his life would have changed. Since then, 2008, Brandt Snedeker hasn't been the same player. He was PGA Tour Rookie of the Year in 2007. Really looked like an up-and-coming star. He went through a stretch after 2008 where he didn't play as well. Now, he has won once this season. Won early in the season. Hasn't had a top 10 since Doral. So it's not like this is a guy who's been contending on the PGA Tour. This is not like a guy like Jason Dufner or Matt Kuchar. And in 2007, 2008, Brandt Snedeker would have been a good bet to be better than those guys. So, maybe the collapse at Augusta affected him. And when I see someone, the thought of him, the image of him after that collapse and the Sunday, not able to hold it together emotionally, just, babbling on and blubbering on, it makes me doubt that he's going to be able to hold up this weekend. And if you don't think that's valid, let me ask you this. Who's the greatest golfer of this era? Tiger Woods. Who are a couple other of the greater golfers of this era? Oh, I don't know. People like Phil Mickelson, Ernie Els, Vijay Singh. If you're talking about guys in number of tournaments won, numbers of majors won. What's the common denominator in all 4 of those guys that I mentioned? Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Ernie Els, Vijay Singh. Have you ever seen any one of those guys blubber and go on after a win or a loss? I'm not talking about getting misty. I'm talking about bawling, breakdown, cannot control yourself, which is what happened to Brandt Snedeker in that situation. No, of course not. Tiger Woods, when he wins, that big smile, maybe a fist pump. The last time he won, he was sneering right after the win at the media. Remember when he said that bit about, 6 months ago, people were saying I'd never win again. Look where we're at now. This guy who relishes in it. It's because these guys sort of expect to be in that situation. They prepare themselves for it. So it's within their sort of emotional capacity to sort of handle that and perform under pressure. Like, I imagine if you're fighting in a war. Now, thank God I've never had a fight in a war. But I imagine that guys fare better who sort of wrap themselves around the possibility that, hey, I could die. This is going to be serious well before they ever hit the ground. The guy who's whistling Dixie thinking, oh, I get to fire my rifle, you know, I just have a feeling when he drops down and gets the gravity of the situation, he might not handle it quite as well. That seems like the guy who might hide under the dead body and sort of shiver. Now, I don't mean to compare golf to war, because those things are about as far separate as you could physically be. And I think that guys like Tiger and Phil and Ernie Els and VJ, who act like, you know, they've been there before and they expect to do it, I think they put golf in its proper perspective. They understand that it is, you know, it's not a life or death situation. It's nothing to get to bawl about and go on about, no matter the outcome, win or lose. And think about the great golfers in history. I mean, forget the golfers of today. Tiger Woods, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Ben Hogan. How much video have you seen of these guys after a win or a loss, not able to contain themselves, gushing tears, blubbering on? Didn't happen. I'm sorry, those guys, Palmer, Hogan, they'd kind of give a smile and a wink and light up a cigarette when they're holding the trophy. I mean, that's what, you know, champions have a certain way about them. And you can see it. I mean, and I'm just not sure if Brandt Snedeker is that guy. Now, maybe he can prove me wrong over the next couple of days. And Brandt Snedeker's not alone. Look at somebody like Steve Stricker. Steve Stricker is as serious as they come in terms of on the golf course. When you watch him play, his expression never changes. You know, he's been in the top 10 on the PGA Tour and the world ranking for years now, a decade. Won several times, 12, I believe. After nearly every one of his wins, I make a joke about it usually because he's so serious, and after every one of his wins, as soon as the putt goes in the hole that seals the win, he instantly breaks down right there on the green. I mean, just can't control himself. So you can tell how tight he's wound up. Coincidentally, or maybe not, Steve Stricker's 45 and has never won a major. Considered one of the best players out there to have never won a major. So I'm just saying proceed with caution if you're intending on backing Brandt Snedeker. And right now he can be had at 6-1. Leading the tournament, but you can still get him at 6-1 over there in some of those bookmakers. Ladbrokes, Paddy Power, a couple of them. And again, not to pile on Brandt Snedeker, but, you know, I do think something like what happened to him after he lost the Masters could expose him as a little soft. And another thing that you would sort of bolster that with, I mean, and again, I know it's not, you know, you might not have to have all the toughness in the world to win a golf tournament, even a major. But it does require some measure of mental toughness, there's no question about it. And now, Brandt Snedeker last month, and this is not a joke, for all you non-golf fans out there, you're going to probably chuckle at this and be like, exactly, golfers, you know, exactly. So last month in the second round of the Memorial, this is serious, Brandt Snedeker cracked his rib with a hard cough. An exceptionally hard cough cracked his rib, causing him to withdraw from the Memorial, and he missed the next month, missed the U.S. Open, recuperating from this injury. That is not a joke, was caused by a hard cough. Now, golfers, of course, don't cough any harder than athletes in any other sport, or people in general. So people listening, I mean, I know we've all had terrible coughs that rack our body. How many of us have ever cracked a rib? How many of us have ever had to miss whatever our jobs are for a month after a cough? I'm sorry. That sounds a little soft. You know, you could hear if that story were told to a room full of, say, NFL football players, oh, the laughter it would draw. You know, those guys, absolutely, I'm sure nearly every one of them who plays sustains an injury worse than Brandt Snedeker's coughing injury, probably in every single game, probably in every single practice. I mean, so anyway, Brandt Snedeker, hopefully he'll be able to contain his coughs, not hurt himself, practice swinging, getting in and out of the bunkers. Hopefully he'll step out of bed carefully this morning right into his silk slippers. We'll see if he's able to hold up over the last two rounds and win the British Open. Take it home. Like I said, come on. You're not going to watch the last 2 rounds, Pete? The final 2 rounds of the British Open? Not a golf fan at all?
Not at all, man.
Does not grab you at all?
No, I'll tell you what, though. The only time I have ever watched golf was when Tiger Woods was doing really well. I mean, I know I sound like one of those guys, one of those Tiger Woods bandwagoners, but that was really the only time it was really entertaining to me, because it was really cool to see a guy who could make these ridiculously long putts, place it perfectly on the. What are you giving me the look for here?
No, I'm saying you're exactly right. I mean, what you're articulating right now is why the PGA Tour loves to have Tiger in contention. Because the fact of the matter is, even though it might irritate some hardcore golf fans, that there are a lot of people just like you who really don't care unless Tiger's doing well. That irritates hardcore golf fans. You know what? Golf needs the fans like you. Golf needs the casual fans. If they want to keep growing, if they want purses to keep growing, if they want interest to keep growing, you can equate it to a situation that we're well familiar with here in Northeast Florida with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I had a caller on the show this past Sunday. Somebody brought up Tim Tebow, had a caller on the show call in and say, well, I've had season tickets for 6 years. Me and my friends would have sold our ticket. That would have attracted all the fair weather fans. Well, similar to the PGA Tour, the Jacksonville Jaguars are in a situation where they need all the fair weather fans they can get, even if that irritates the hardcore base. Now, obviously, that didn't happen and is not going to happen, and so the Jags are going to go another year with really only their hardcore fans and no one else unless they start winning, which a lot of people, like Vegas odds makers, think is very unlikely. The Jags, we've mentioned on the show, have the lowest, tied with the Browns and the Colts, as the lowest NFL win total over-under number this season, 5.5. That's right. You can, if you go out there in Vegas, you can bet whatever you want on the Jaguars. If you have confidence that they're going to be better than a 5-win team this year, all they have to do is get to 6 wins for that bet to be a winner, and you get better than even money on your money for that bet. It's plus 105 if you want to bet the over 5.5 right now in Vegas on the Jaguars this season. That means bet $100 to win $105, $1,000 to win $1,050. Conversely, minus 135 if you want to bet the under. You have to risk 135 to win 100, risk 1350 to win 1,000. People think the Jaguars are going to be bad. So, don't know how I really took this from the British Open to the Jaguars. Point being, the PGA Tour needs all the casual fans like Pete it can get. So even though it might irritate the hardcore golf fans, or who don't like every one of Tiger's shots being shown on the weekend, even when he's way out of contention, when they're not showing guys who are actually relevant climbing up the leaderboard. But there's a reason. There's a reason they do that. Sports need casual fans if they want to grow and become like something like the NFL is right now. And you say, what sport has the most casual fans? You say, oh, the NFL, without a doubt. And that is true. I mean, it's the biggest sport by far, head and shoulders above the rest. We'll go to break on this note. $1.3 billion. A little over that, actually. $1.325 billion bet on NFL football in Vegas in 2011. The next 2 most bet upon sports, basketball and baseball combined, did not equal that total. Anyway, do have to go to a quick break now. When we come back, I want to get into some NFL football. Interesting things yesterday coming from a former Jaguar that I want to talk about. We'll also get into some college football as SEC Media Days wrapped up yesterday. Got a couple thoughts I want to get to there. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to get in. I'm John Arnette, and this is the Social Gambler Radio Hour.
Nothing says love like Italian food, so don't take her to a generic big chain.
Welcome back to the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I'm John Arnette. Good to have you with us today. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to join the program. 794-9001. We are brought to you by thesocialgambler.com, your leader in free sports, picks, news, and reviews. All things sports and sports gambling related can be found on The Social Gambler, including video podcasts of this radio show. As I've said before, not sure if that drives traffic or drives away traffic, but they're on there. Check them out. Remember, Social Gambler is not only a website, they're also an app for your smartphone. In the next segment, we might get into a couple things on the Social Gambler today. Lots of things updated daily. 8 or 10 fresh posts, fresh pieces of content, updated daily. Site's really building, getting better and better. Check it out, thesocialgambler.com. Before we went away, I mentioned I had some thoughts on some things said by a former Jaguar. Former Jaguar great, maybe the greatest Jaguar, Fred Taylor. Now, Tony Baselli and Mark Brunell would have something to say about that. But really, there's no argument that it's between those three guys. Baselli, Brunell, and Fred Taylor. Fred Taylor has been working out recently with Maurice Jones-Drew in Miami. The two are good friends, obviously, having played together for a couple of years. And Taylor had some things to say that I think should be concerning to Jaguar fans. I think this Jones-Drew situation has been handled poorly by Jaguars management. I'll get to that in a second. But anyway, Taylor said what we all know, basically, that Jones-Drew has expressed frustration that the Jags have told him they're not going to give him a new contract. Taylor also said he does think it's possible that Jones-Drew's holdout will extend beyond training camp, that Jones-Drew will miss actual regular season games holding out. Taylor says, quote, "I think he will continue to hold out because there's been some things that, I guess, were miscommunicated by both sides." He goes on, "Pride gets involved. Somebody has to give. I don't think Maurice will be the first to show his hand." So, I mean, well, what is that saying? I mean, it's clear to me what that's saying. That's saying somebody from the Jaguars front office has said something to Maurice Jones-Drew that Maurice Jones-Drew did not want to hear. Jones-Drew feeling disrespected. And so it sounds like that at least it's Taylor's impression that Jones-Drew's going to be pretty stubborn about not being the one to give in here. That is not good for the Jaguars organization and the Jaguar fans. Now, as I said, I do think this situation has been mismanaged by the Jaguars, but I get the sense in listening to media, fans, friends of mine around the area over the last couple of weeks that I could be in the minority. Most people seem to be siding with the Jaguars on this, saying, "Oh, Maurice Jones-Drew, what are you crying about? You signed the contract. It was front-loaded. Be happy about it. You should play." But that's not the way I see it. And I really think people who make that argument don't really understand or can't fully put themselves in the shoes of an NFL player, don't understand the way contracts are structured in the NFL. Now, we've said it before, we'll go over it again. In sports like the NBA and Major League Baseball, they're guaranteed contracts, meaning if you sign a 6-year, $85 million contract, you are receiving all $85 million of those dollars, no matter what happens. Even if you don't play for the entire year, they have to pay you. Even if they release you, they have to pay you. The NFL is not that way. You sign a 4-year, $40 million contract in the NFL, and you know what's guaranteed? Your signing bonus in the first year. That's it. They can cut you. They can cut you after the first season, not owe you the remainder of the contract. They can cut you at any time, not owe you the remainder of that contract. Now, part of that is what has built the NFL into what it is. It's why the NFL's the best game out there. It's why you never hear the same complaints about the NFL that you hear about the NBA, about Major League Baseball. Well, these guys look like they're going half speed. These guys look like they're not putting it all out there. The college guys look like they try harder. No, not the case. Because there's no security in the NFL. You always have to earn your job. You can be cut at any time. We see all the time veteran, big-name players cut because they're owed too much money on their contract and might not be the player they once were. So so Maurice Jones-Drew signs a 5-year contract 3 years ago, knowing that he can be cut at any time. Now, the total value of that contract, if you add it all up, including the signing bonus and everything he got, because I've heard a bunch of people saying, "Oh, it's front-loaded. He's already made so much money." Well, the total averages out to be about $6 million a year, which is half as much as the best couple of running backs in the league, or the leading money makers in the league, Adrian Peterson and Chris Johnson, And it's less than a bunch of other guys that Jones-Drew has proven that he's frankly better than. Guys like LaShawn McCoy, D'Angelo Williams. So even if you consider the entirety of the deal, the signing bonus, the first couple of years' pay, which is more than the last couple of years, it still seems like Jones-Drew is getting a little bit of a raw deal, especially considering he led the league in rushing last year for a team that ranked last in the league in passing. I mean, everyone knew that he was going to get the ball because he was all they had, still led the league in rushing. Still had a good average, yards per carry. At the peak of his career, 27 years old. And now, it makes it even worse when you consider the next couple of years, he'll only be making $4.5 million a year. Maurice Jones-Drew has every right to demand more money than this. The Jaguars have plenty of salary cap space, at least $24 million of salary cap space. They got an owner who's pledged to spend to the cap. They've brought in a guy this offseason, Laurent Robinson. They're paying him $6 million a year, more than Jones-Drew will make these next couple of years. He's never even been a starting wide receiver on a team. He's been a 3-wide receiver his entire career. He's played at 5 different NFL teams. Meanwhile, Maurice Jones-Drew has been the man for this team. The only sort of relevant Jaguar on a national landscape, from a national perspective. Really the only Pro Bowl level player the Jaguars have. Apologies to Josh Scobie. I know he's a Pro Bowl level player, but he's a kicker. So Jones-Drew, if I'm him, I'm thinking, what is going on here? Why am I not getting a little pay raise? And he deserves it. He deserves it. He's not declining. He's still going to have at least 2 or 3 more years in his prime. Give him that new contract. Pay him the $6 or $7 million a year these next couple of years. And then if you want to cut him when he's 30 and not owe him the rest of that contract, if you sign him to a 4 or 5 year deal now, if you want to not pay him the back half of that deal, well, cut him. Cut him when he's 30. Cut him when he's 31. That's fine. It's a cutthroat business. We don't expect you to be loyal to the guy to a fault. We just expect you, and when I say we, I mean we as a fan base, expect you, the organization, to keep guys happy, keep guys around who are our best players right now. We want you to take care of the guys who can win us football games this season. And that is exactly what Maurice Jones-Drew is. Those of you who think Rashad Jennings is a capable backup, Rashad Jennings is just that, a backup. He's performed well for a 7th-round pick out of Liberty. But this guy, even though he has good size and adequate speed, he doesn't have explosiveness. I mean, he's not as powerful as Maurice Jones-Drew, even though he's a lot bigger. He's an average at best type running back. Sort of a plodding 3.5 yards a carry guy if he got the full workload. And we're going to see that. We're going to see evidence of that if this Jones-Drew holdout does extend into the season. And I hope it doesn't. But I certainly don't like the direction it's moving. Now, one little ray of light, ray of hope for Jaguar fans out there to say, well, maybe Maurice Jones-Drew was just, maybe Fred Taylor has the wrong idea. Maybe Jones-Drew has no intention of missing regular season games. Sirius XM NFL Radio, which Jones-Drew, he has hosted a program on before, they held a celebrity fantasy football draft yesterday. MJD drew the first overall pick, and he drafted himself. So, obviously, who knows how seriously he takes that, but for what it's worth, he drafted himself, so at least he must have some plans on playing this year and contributing. Anyway, again, it just seems like a failure of the Jaguars organization here not to take care of their best player. So you have negative news swirling this offseason, swirling around training camp, unnecessary negative noise, really. In other NFL news that could be certainly considered negative noise for the teams involved, a couple of players arrested for DUIs in the last 24 hours. Tennessee Titans wide receiver Kenny Britt, as well as Seattle Seahawks running back Marshawn Lynch. Certainly, like the rest of you, I did not bat an eye when I heard about these things. Was not the least bit surprised. What you have here is a culture of young people given a whole lot of money, young rich people who are treated extremely well everywhere they go. You don't want to use the word entitled because it has a negative connotation, but even if you're a good person, I think, if you're a big-time NFL athlete, it's hard not to feel a little entitled when you get treated a certain way everywhere you go. And so that leads to, some behavior. These guys think that they can do things and get away with them. And these guys probably aren't very different than a lot of, people in their young 20s throughout society. So it's a shame for Britt and Marshawn Lynch. Thankfully, no one was hurt due to them driving drunk. This gives Roger Goodell, he's rubbing his hands together now. Loves bringing the hammer down. We've learned that. I expect suspensions coming for both of these guys. I do want to move on now, talk a little college football. SEC Media Days went on the last 3 days up in Birmingham. I had intended on going up, doing the show live from SEC Media Days, but something came up, had to leave town earlier this week, so couldn't go up there. But I've really been enjoying over the last couple of days, watched all the video coverage. Now, even if you don't go, all of the coaches' press conferences and all the players, there's a couple of players who come from every team. Everybody's press conferences are on videotape, so you can see things just like you're sitting there in the room. And I've been watching loads of content over the last couple of days from SEC Media Days because I love SEC football. This season can't start soon enough. I think it's going to be another great year in the SEC and in college football in general. I say another. Maybe I'm saying that in the wrong way because last year was one of the worst seasons I can remember in college football. Began with the Ohio State scandal that really looked so tame in comparison. The Ohio State and the Nevin Shapiro Miami scandal, I should mention that. Those both look so tame in comparison to this horrible thing in Penn State that has engulfed the college football news cycle for the better part of the last few months. The national title game last year was unsatisfying to a lot of people. The national champion didn't even win their own division. Excuse me, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Must speak slowly. Anyway, the one good thing to come out of it, we finally have some form of a playoff. 4-team playoff that will take effect in 2014. And I think all of us college football fans are ready for this season to start and for the college football talk to be about the games and what's going on and what will be going on, rivalries, things of that nature, instead of all this off-the-field stuff. And really, these SEC Media Days were the first time. Now, nearly every coach was asked about Joe Paterno. We'll get into some of that here in a second, but a lot of football was talked, and it was good to hear. There were a couple of sort of highlights, at least I thought they were highlights, things that made me chuckle or things that I thought were interesting and that I thought maybe some of our listening audience would be interested in. A couple of things I wanted to pass along. Missouri, of course, a new member to the SEC. Missouri and A&M becoming the 13th and 14th members of the conference, moving over from the Big 12, where they've been since the Big 12's inception. And Missouri wide receiver T.J. Moe. Now, T.J. Moe, for those of you SEC fans who haven't seen him play, he's a little guy, already one of the most prolific wide receivers in Missouri history. Missouri's sort of a spread team, throws the ball a lot, so Moe gets plenty of opportunities. Sort of a slot guy, catches a lot of balls. He's quick. Good, very valuable commodity for a team to have. Think he's a guy like Ace Sanders for South Carolina. SEC fans might know Ace Sanders. Or think Travis McGriff, Gator fans. I know that's referencing about 10 years back there, but I know some people listening remember Travis McGriff. That's the type of player T.J. Moe is. Anyway, Moe was asked what's different about the SEC. And he said, quote, "They say girls are prettier, air is fresher, and toilet paper is thicker," end quote. Now, Moe, you could tell he was sort of feeling his oats. He went on to talk about, the challenges of playing in the SEC, and he was very confident about it. He still talked about it like Missouri was in the Big 12. He sort of said, in the Big 12, he was using the phrase we, and talked about the SEC as they. And he wouldn't concede that the SEC was better than the Big 12 in any way. He just said that in the Big 12, we put our best athletes on offense, while in the SEC, they put all their best athletes on defense. Well, when you look at some of the offensive players that have been drafted out of the SEC in the first round in recent years, I'm thinking guys like Trent Richardson, Julio Jones, A.J. Green, Cam Newton, Tim Tebow. I'm not sure all the best athletes are put on defense. I just think there are more great athletes in the SEC, and I do think T.J. Moe is going to be in for a little bit of an awakening this season. Because not only is that Missouri offense going to find it a lot harder to operate than they did in the Big 12, but that Missouri defense, which is by no means stout. Missouri has struggled on defense for a couple of years. They're young on defense this year. I have a feeling that T.J. Moe is going to come to find out that, hey, wait a second, these SEC offenses score a lot of points on our defense too. I guess they just don't score a lot of points on each other's defense. Because let me tell you, while the Georgias of the world might only muster 14 or 17 against Alabama or LSU, you put Georgia up against Missouri, my bet is they're scoring 30, 35 or more. Same with Texas A&M, by the way. Same type of defense out there in Texas A&M. Those Big 12 teams who are coming into the SEC, they're going to find out that, hey, maybe it wasn't just that these SEC offenses were not good and the offenses of the Big 12 were so good. Maybe there's a little bit of difference in terms of the number of athletes. Or maybe not. We shall see. It'll all play out on the field. Can't get here soon enough. Now, Florida fans might be interested in some of the comments from running back Mike Gillislee. Now, Gillislee, Will Muschamp has been very forthright in saying that he wants Florida to be a power running team on offense. Even though Muschamp does not directly control the offense, he's taken the step, which is a little bit unusual for a coach who focuses on defense now. Muschamp is taking the step of making proclamations about what kind of offense they'll play. And he said it'll be predicated on a power running game. And Mike Gillislee is their most experienced running back returning. He's expected to be the focal point of the Florida Gators running game this season. And he was very confident, sounded like he's prepared for it. He laid out, for all the media assembled, his goals for this season: 1,500 rushing yards, 24 touchdowns. Now, he didn't mention anything about those goals. A lot of people maybe would have deflected that question and say, well, I just want to contribute to the team's wins. All I care about is we return Florida football to prominence. Gillislee did not take it in that direction, spoke about his personal goals: 1,500 rushing yards, 24 touchdowns. Now, coincidentally or not, I'm thinking not, 24 touchdowns would be one better than Tim Tebow's school record of 23 rushing touchdowns. And the last Florida Gator to rush for 1,000 yards in a season was Seatric Faison, Jacksonville's own, Fletcher High School's own Seatric Faison. Accomplished that feat in 2004 on a Gator team that wasn't very good. It'd be interesting to see if Gillislee does get to 1,000 yards. Will this year's Gator team be any good? And if that happened, if Gillislee rushed for 1,000 yards, and if the team was like that team in 2004, on which Seatric Faison rushed for 1,000 yards, maybe then we should debate how important 1,000-yard rushers are these days in college football. Do have a couple of more thoughts on SEC Media Days. Got to take a quick break now, though. Pete's giving me the dirty look. Might not have any intro music for the next segment. Might have just talked through another break. Anyway, we'll be back in a minute. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to get in on the other side. I'm John Arnette, and this is the Social Gambler Radio Hour.
Do you feel like the only ones enjoying your backyard are the birds? Enjoy low-maintenance PVC furniture from Builders.
Welcome back to the Social Gambler Radio Hour. I'm John Arnette. Good to have you with us today. Lovely Friday afternoon here in St. Augustine. If you're on your way home from work, probably a good feeling. Listen to us on 1420, St. Augustine Sports Leader, ESPN 1420. Of course, you're not listening to us on ESPN 1420. You can hear us via the Listen Live link on 1420sports.com or thesocialgambler.com. Socialgambler.com, of course, primary sponsor of this program. We urge you to check them out. Video podcasts of this program available daily on thesocialgambler.com, along with a wealth of other information. A lot of things on there today, some NBA free agency stuff, what the possibility of Dwight Howard going to the Lakers has done to those odds. The Lakers were 12-1 to win the NBA championship. They moved all the way up to 2-1 at MGM books now, and we don't even know for sure if Howard is going to the Lakers. Bettors just anticipating that move. Also some Formula One racing, European sports, plenty of European sports and American sports on thesocialgambler.com. And we've told you before, you can get all your free advice from The Social Gambler. The only place here in Northeast Florida you can legally take advantage of that advice. The only legal sports book in the area is on board the Jacks or Better Casino, the casino boat that now sails 9 times weekly out of Mayport. Jacks or Better now sails every day but Tuesday. They have full Vegas action. Non-smoking level, a smoking level, and an outdoor area up top where you can enjoy an ocean breeze. Anytime you head out to the Jacks or Better, be sure to mention this radio show, the Social Gambler Radio Hour, for $10 free play. That's right, just for mentioning this radio show, they will give you $10 you can use same as cash anywhere in the casino out there at the Jacks or Better. Be sure to check them out. We are going to go to the phones now. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to join us. We have Charlie on the line. Charlie, you're on the Social Gambler Radio Hour. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, John. I just wanted to thank you for helping convince myself that I'm going to have to go to Vegas and make a little bet on that Jacksonville season game total.
You're going over the 5.5?
I am going to go under, and you know, the logic a little bit is Jones Drew. I think as a holdout, you know, if we're sure about that 5.5, it definitely seems like it could. The vacation might pay for itself.
well, I'll tell you what. If the Jaguars win, if that's actually under 5.5, and they win 5 or less games, if Gene Smith is still in charge come next year's draft, then I don't know how ownership can look the fans in the face and say they're doing right by the fans and really caring about winning football games. And even when we had Tony Vaselli on the show, you know, a month or so ago, and he said, he was frank about it, that he was friends with Gene Smith, and I said, will Gene Smith get to finish out this 3-year extension regardless of results? And he said, absolutely not. And so I hope that you're wrong about under 5.5. They've got to eke out 6 and 10 anyway, right? But maybe not.
Maybe I'm so bitter at the franchise, I'm starting to think about trying to make money from all this. So anyway, I just I've been to the games. I love cheering them on, but you know, 5.5 is a lot to get done with that team.
Well, I'm afraid your pessimism, Charlie, is shared amongst a lot of the Jaguar fan base. There are some pockets of hope out there, but there's no question this offseason there's been a lot of things, you know, from the Justin Blackmon arrest to the Shad Khan dispute with the city to the failure to acquire Tim Tebow. There's been a lot of things that have sort of soured some Jaguar fans on the direction of the franchise, and I think only winning can sort of rise them out of it. Winning is the only thing that is going to generate some optimism, some positivity around here, and we'll see. We'll see if they can do it this year.
Well, you know, on another note, I wanted to ask you, John, you know, I'm enjoying watching the British Open, but I got to tell you, I'm not enjoying watching Tiger hit stingers all the way around the whole golf course. You know, I don't even know if he's hitting more than 1 or 2 drivers, and you know, do you think some of these old courses aren't quite holding up to the new technology? It just seems like, you know, if they do hit driver and it's a little pitch in, and the smart play is just to keep a lot of the traps out of play, and they're just hitting these irons almost short of them, and seem to be going almost as far as maybe the old drivers used to go.
Well, yeah, you know, you bring up an interesting point there, Charlie, and certainly right now is the right time to make that point because these guys have torn up Lytham over the first 2 days. Brandt Snedeker tying the 36-hole record in a British Open, and they've been playing the British Open well over 100 years. So maybe so. Lytham is short for today's standards. It's less than 7,200 yards. There have been a lot of irons out there. I think what has really sort of unmanned that golf course this week has been the softness. You know, we saw at Turnberry a few years ago when Tom Watson almost won that if you make a golf course firm enough, it can negate almost anything. You know, if players are having to land shots 15, 20 yards short of the green, all of a sudden if you're hitting a 6-iron into a green and there's an up pin, you have no chance. You're having to try to think of, how can I do this? And that brings guys like Tom Watson, for example, into play. Now, obviously the firmer, of course, is that could take the driver out of someone's hands even more. And so maybe your point, some of these really old courses, over there that the British Open are being played on, maybe there's no way to make those. Now, maybe the game just has passed some of those courses by in the sense of today's players just don't have to hit drivers. Remember I believe it was the last British Open Tiger won at Royal Liverpool or Hoylake, whatever they call it. I don't believe he hit one driver around that whole course. Wasn't that the year that he just hit irons off of every single tee? I mean,
he just hit that stinger every time.
That's right. So yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe those British Open courses, today's players just don't have to hit drivers. But I do think that if they can make them play really firm and fast, like I said, I'll reference again Turnberry a few years ago when Tom Watson almost won. I do think that they can still make those courses play plenty tough,
Right, absolutely. Well, listen, thanks for taking my call, and I enjoy the show. Take care.
All right, hey, appreciate the call there, Charlie. 794-9001, the number if you'd like to join the program. And yeah, a lot of people don't like seeing 10 under leading a major after 2 rounds. I'm sure the Arnette, who of course runs your British Open, if they'd had their preference, they wish the course was playing a little tougher. But, that's golf. Weather is a part of it. And when you get soft conditions and no wind, plays easier. Sometimes just nothing you can do about it. Still an exciting leaderboard. Still should be an exciting weekend. I wanted to get back to SEC Media Days here for a minute. A couple things I wanted to get to for the end of the show today. A bunch of different things I could talk about. Probably could do a 2-hour show on SEC Media Days in itself, because it's a topic that I'm very interested in, and there was a lot of little nuggets that people who are interested in SEC football may be interested in. But the sort of overriding, I've seen all 14, because I watched every single one, all 14 SEC coaches news conference, because that's what I like watching. I like watching those coaches stand up there, field questions from the media. Sometimes they're asked questions they don't really like. See what their explanation is. And it gives me a feel for, a lot of times you can tell when a coach is anxious about the type of team they have, like I felt Joker Phillips was this year. Joker Phillips, the head coach of Kentucky, doesn't have time to think about being on the hot seat and just thinking about the next day. Did not strike me as overwhelmingly confident, and Kentucky's picked to finish last in the SEC East by most people. When you hear Nick Saban talk, here's a guy, and I am no lover of Nick Saban. Not a Nick Saban fan. Find him extremely dry. Not sure he'd be fun to play for. Not sure I'd want to go play for him if I was a high school athlete. But when you hear him talk, that sounds like greatness in coaching. He sounds like a guy who is just the epitome of professionalism. And you could just almost hear him, when you hear him talk, when you hear him explain, sort of break down what college football is, you can put yourself in the shoes of his players. You could understand how they're motivated. How they're not going to rest on their laurels after the success of last year. Saban went on, gave a really interesting talk on how in college football, each team has their own identity. Talked about the turnover of the rosters. Loses 25% or more of his team every year. And how each team, each player on that team has a different role every year, and each player, each year brings a new chance for different players to shine and make their mark on the history of their program. And, I'm not articulating it as well as he did, because I know it kind of sounds dull, I think, coming out of my mouth, but I was very interested to hear him talk about it. And you could see where if I was a player who had been sitting on the bench last season, maybe in a reserve role, and all of these guys from Alabama, because they've been tearing up on the recruiting trail for 4 or 5 years now, so everyone on their roster was a 4 or 5 star recruit, was a big-timer in high school. And now you see where, after reading, if I'm the rest of the SEC, I don't expect much of a drop-off at all from the Crimson Tide this year, even though they have to replace 13 starters. 13 starters have to be replaced this year. But I tell you what, with the talent they've recruited, listening to Nick Saban, just getting sort of a glimpse on what kind of motivator he can be and really what kind of grasp he has on, it didn't only sound like the game of football, but, you know, he got a little philosophical up there. Very interesting stuff. I do disagree with him on one thing. One thing he said that's making a lot of headlines nationally. He was asked about the Joe Paterno situation at Penn State, and Saban said he felt a tax should be placed on tickets to Penn State athletic events, and that tax, the proceeds from that tax, should be given to charities that help victims of sexual abuse. Now, that sounds noble and things like that, and a lot of people have sort of taken that idea and ran with it, said it's a great idea. But I'm just not sure the fans, the people attending events, are the ones that should be penalized for all this. It should be the Penn State football program, which for a decade that we know of, and probably more, was at very best harboring a child rapist. At the worst, it was helping facilitate it. Because Jerry Sandusky was allowed to bring these boys around. These boys ate meals with coaches. So this is a corrupt culture. The football program, they're the ones that need to be penalized. The football program, not the fans attending all Penn State sporting events. At least that's my thoughts on it. I guess they differ from Nick Saban's. We are all out of time for today. Folks, I've enjoyed the show. As always, hope you have a great weekend. Remember, we can now be heard Sundays at 10 o'clock on 1010. If you don't catch us then, we'll be back at Monday at 4 for more of the Social Gambler Radio Hour here on ESPN 1420.
At St. Augustine High School. You are listening to the home of the Yellow Jackets on ESPN 1420 WAOC.